Welcome to the Blackwater Podcast. Today your hosts Sage and Julius talk to Aidan Arant. Aidan is one of our dearest friends and brothers. He is a living Adonis, with a curiosity matched only by his totem animal, the cat. He has the memory of an elephant, and if you are not careful, he will tell you one too many animal facts. We hope you enjoy the show, and if you don't, we would love to hear about it.
Today we're here with Aidan Arant, who me and Sage deeply love. Sage is on the phone in Atlanta. Hi, Sage.
Heyo.
Hello, Sage.
Aidan is really the origin story of this podcast.
In a sense, yeah, if you connect all the dots from start to finish or to this point of continuation,
Yes.
it's really my fascination and love with Blackwater Forest and the river systems up there that got me to collect my loved ones, my friends, and be like, hey, we should all go out there in a tribal setting and commune with ourselves, with nature, to reflect. Really going along the lines of more or less an archaic revival to get back to sort of an origin point in our culture. And Blackwater is just, it's my home away from home. I wouldn't be alive without Blackwater, essentially.
Yeah. I can't say the latter. I can't say I wouldn't be alive with it, but it definitely is my home away from home.
Oh, I feel that myself very deeply, very strongly.
Yeah, with the whole Kyoki movement of the late 20th century, parents met out there in 92. They were naked as jaybirds on a white sand beach. They fell in love. There was sort of a hippie revival movement of the 90s. The New Age movement was all part of this, and they became connected with it. My dad is like a freshman in college. My mom in her mid-30s, just trying to embrace her hippiness, essentially. There were a lot of great things that came out of that camp out, the Kyoki, and a lot of kids came out of it, including myself.
Sage, I just heard that you may have been the first child, but Aidan said that that's up for debate.
Well, I wasn't, my parents didn't meet in Blackwater per se, but, it was me, Terracotta, Wolfie, and a few other kids that were part of like the first main like Sunshine Mama camp. We were the babies in that particular group, and our connections are deeply embedded into that land, into that forest, and of course in the river. It's a connection that we've held and maintained throughout our whole lives.
Yeah,
it's just such a blessing to have Aidan here with us.
Thank you.
To talk and to share our truth and our experiences.
Yeah.
Blackwater is such an interesting place to me. It's essentially a spring-fed creek system and the Gulf Coast pine woods. White sand beaches, very sedimentary, different types of rock. And the whole Kyoki movement, I think, was influenced by the setting, sort of influencing a flow state, a Tao. There's the Welsh saying that poetry is made by the edge of running water. And from that, people just had fun. They created families together. They enjoyed their company together. There is drama, but that's true with any community, any tribe. But for the most part, a lot of great things came from that. And I'm heavily influenced by that in my life. That's why I was like, Sage, let's come back. Let's start doing these campouts again. Then I met you through the men's circle. I'm like, oh man, you seem really interested. You should check this area out. And it sits in a special place in my heart and mind and spirit. My friend Devin, who's the world traveler among us, he says he could be in a market in Vietnam and still think about camping on Coldwater Creek.
I love that.
It's a special connection, and really is just kind of as the rivers of our lives flow different directions. It always seems that our rivers ultimately connect with that river ecosystem, and it's just such an honor to be able to continuously return and to bring our energies and to bring more people into that space to help love and support that place.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a sort of I don't want to say give or take, but it's a ebb and flow of energy out there. The more good energy you give out there, the more fun, the more healing, the more good food you eat out there, the more you pick up trash. That sort of adds to the already ancient, old, beautiful theme of Blackwater Forest, the history. It's very rich. I mean, that creek's been there for thousands of years. It's changed shape, but it's always been constant because of the spring system.
Yeah.
I could go on and on about Blackwater. But yeah, that's a huge part of who I am. I consider myself more or less a biophile. Like, I love life. When or if I do get a degree, I'd probably be a biologist. Not necessarily for the monetary side to like have a career or profession, only because I just think it's fun. So I consider myself more or less an amateur biophile, like the precursor to a biologist.
That being said, I feel like you could give any biologist a run for their money.
You said that before, yeah. I have a great passion for talking about that kind of thing.
Yeah, you have the dangerous combination of a good memory and a passion. Yeah.
Particularly with animals. Very much fascinates me.
And you don't have a photographic memory, you have a...
Eidetic?
Eidectic. And what does that mean?
So our true photographic memory is very rare, to where you can just recall a image instantly. You can memorize a textbook in like, say, 20 minutes, what people do. Eidetic is very loosely thrown around, but it's more or less like I can pair a time and place with the memory. It's sort of a mnemonic device for remembering. For instance, I sent Sage a message last night about something that I was trying really hard to remember at the last campout, particularly the name of a animated series that we were talking on the campfire. And last night, and scrolling through YouTube, I saw a clip from the series. Shout out to Xavier, Renegade Angel, the craziest fucking show ever. It does not make sense. But as soon as I saw it, like, I had an image in my mind of exactly where I was sitting and everyone's placement around that fire.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I'm like, oh, that's what I need to remember in that moment. Connecting that memory to that, the desire to clarify what I want to clarify in that moment. Sometimes I'll be at streetlights and be thinking of something really interesting, or a thought comes to my head, just playing around, and for whatever reason, I think this ties into the eidetic theme, I'll come back to that streetlight months, even years later, and that same memory will pop up.
I like that. Now, I did have an animal question.
Sure.
Now, I heard that there's a mammal that poops in cubes. Is that true?
Yeah, it's my go-to animal fact, the wombat of Australia. It's a medium-sized badger-like marsupial. Well, they shit cubes because their essential waste disposal chamber in their burrows, their burrowing marsupial mammal, is before their sleeping chamber as it goes downhill. So their waste doesn't roll back into their sleeping chamber. They've evolved a sphincter that can create cubes so they don't roll. It's amazing biological evolutionary characteristic. It's a truly innocent animal fact.
And a creationist might say, hey, there's proof that there's a God because God made it so wombat shit wouldn't roll back into their hole.
I guess so, but then that brings up the point, like, what about other burrowing mammals that just create another trail, another burrow pathway to have an own waste disposal chamber? Prairie dogs do this. Wombats don't. They just have a singular line.
Got you. Okay. God took pity on them for being dumb.
God, yeah. Marsupials aren't always the brightest of mammals.
They're really not.
Yeah. One of my most disliked animals, I love all animals, but the one that I'm just like, why is this still going and alive, are koalas.
Right. Yeah.
They have smooth brains. They don't have higher brain function. They can't learn new behavioral traits. They have to eat their mother's own pap, which is a disgusting word for fecal matter embedded with microbiome bacteria to help the juveniles be able to digest their eucalyptus leaves.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. But they're just not a bright animal. They won't eat leaves in a bowl or a plate. They can only eat them off a branch. They immediately just start screaming and releasing scent musk from their chest glands. When they're attacked, they bite. God, I take pity on koalas. But I love them. They're great. They have a role in the Australian natural biome. They're just not that bright and kind of gross. The 90% or above suffer from chlamydia.
Did not know that.
Yep. it's a huge factor in the decimation of koala population.
Got to raise awareness for koala chlamydia.
Yeah, man. Those poor koalas. But they're just not bright. Marsupials are a really interesting group of mammals because they split from placental mammals, I want to say around 60 million years ago, or actually before that, during the Mesozoic era. Mm-hmm. So they essentially only carry their embryo through the first trimester of gestation, and they give birth to it, and it's a little fetus that crawls into the pouch and attaches to the mom's teat for the next essentially 3 or 2 trimesters or whatever gestation period is. So it gestates outside the womb. Really interesting, very primitive. The 3 groups of living mammals, you have monotremes, marsupials, and placentals. We're placentals, of course, and you have monotremes that are even more primitive.
Is that a platypus?
Yes.
Okay.
And the echidna, yes. They lay eggs, and they have milk patches.
God, I love the milk patches.
And they're, at least the platypus to some degree is venomous.
I did not know that. That's cool. The reason I was asking you about wombats was you had mentioned wanting to talk about shamanism, and I thought that might be a really good segue into a topic about shamanism. What do you think, Sage?
I love it. That's a very interesting way to present the topic, but
we're here to have fun. I mean, this is my first essentially interview. It's popping the cherry. Feel a little bit nervous, like it's my first date at prom. I got my condom in my pocket.
You're so cute. You're gonna get lucky today.
Well, a good connecting bridge with that subject matter between shamanism and just relative zoology is the idea of totems. That when you see an animal in your life, if you think of the theme that everything you do in life has a reason, when you see an animal in the wild or in your daily life or interact with it as a familiar, that animal is a teacher. And it's teaching you something about yourself, or it's giving you a message from the beyond, whatever you want to call it, the spirit world. And I love that sort of theme of shamanism, and that ties into animism. Animism can be essentially traced to the origins of religion, modern religion. The idea of a hunting party, they're going to go out, they're going to try to go get sustenance and food for the group, the community, the tribe. And they have rituals where they pray to the animals that they're about to go hunt and kill. One of the oldest religious practices in the world is to say thanks before you eat your food. To give thanks to the animal for giving you its body. And embodying certain aspects of that animal, of that totem, you can be a more fulfilled member, contributing member of the tribe. So that to me ties into the idea of shamanism. That's why you see cave paintings of shamans or medicine wearing like elk skulls and stuff like that. There's the famous mushroom shaman from the Tassili-Niger Plateau, that cave painting. He is essentially wearing like an elk or cattle skull, one of these ungulates that's painted like a honeybee.
No way.
Yep.
Whoa.
Oh yeah, it's great. But he's embodying the aspect because he essentially has a shamanic suit that's woven with these mushrooms in the cave painting. And to have mushrooms, at least coprophytic psychoactive mushrooms, you need the dung of an ungulant, of a grass-eating mammal. So he embodies like the cattle archetype of eating the grass and creating the manure that grows the mushroom. And the oldest form of preservation that we know of, besides essentially drying food, is honey. Honey does not go bad. They have found honey in Egyptian tombs.
That's right, yeah.
That essentially, you just add water because it's slightly dehydrated and it's still good as new. That ties in. So they're thanking the honeybee for the honey and the ungulate, whatever animal it is, for the manure that grows this medicine. And so they're embodying those archetypes, those animals as totems, to give thanks and to learn something new. Shamanism, though, should not be confused with a religion. Shamanism is a series of techniques to divine, to go beyond your body, to go beyond your world and bring back knowledge to help the survival of the group and the realization of the purpose of the group. Whatever that is in the moment, whether that's to go out and gather a certain edible.
It makes me think that the certain aspects of wombat medicine would be to design your shit so that it doesn't fall on you while you sleep.
Or just don't shit where you eat. That's
actually a very interesting take on the practice and the history of our connection with the animal world. and just how relevant it has been for us to connect with animals and to look just beyond the biological factors into the survival factors of how they help us to live, but to utilize and practice with actual medicines that they provide to us, and how important they can be for not just our physical journeys, but our spiritual journeys into a world of meaning. As many as us are looking for in this life. So it is a great tie-in, and I thank you, Julius, for offering that as a way to bring in this kind of topic.
I can keep riffing about that because there's interesting things, specifically about the wombat, because it's an Australian marsupial mammal. Shamanism, even though it can be associated with psychedelics, should not be entirely associated permanently, because there's a lot of shamanistic themes, rituals, connections that have no substance use whatsoever, including the Aboriginals of Australia. Australia is a very entheogenic, poor country. I mean, there's psychedelic mushrooms there now. There's really no connection to possible Aborigines using them that we know of. A lot of those species have been introduced. So to them, animism is a very important topic. I don't know if they necessarily prayed to wombats, but they definitely hunted them. They're definitely an interesting animal. They're very aggressive, just so you know, too. They're essentially like a badger, a vegetarian badger. But they preyed to kangaroos and bilbies. My personal favorite Australian mammal, the thylacine, the marsupial wolf. They preyed to snakes. They preyed to the birds they hunted. And they would go on walkabouts.
Yeah.
It was essentially like it's a shamanic journey in the physical world, where you go and you walk and you discover something and you come back. And that's essentially more of an endurance test.
Yeah.
Because you push your body to its physiological breaking point. And from there, you learn things and you come back. You survive. But you go to the dream time, which is their spiritual world. It's where they come from and where they will go to. It's where all animals come from and go to. So back to the theme of like totems. If you're going on a walkabout and you are thirsty for water, you see a kangaroo. So that kangaroo tells you to travel in this distance. It's the teacher. You find water. You're re-nourished with hydration. In that moment, nothing can be more important than having the animal teach you where water is.
I have a potential tie-in, but I might need help.
Sure.
I'm trying to remember the name of the guy who invented LSD.
Albert Hoffman?
Albert Hoffman.
Yeah.
Albert Hoffman.
I almost said Gordon R. Wilson. That's the wrong.
Yeah, I was reading his autobiography, and he talked about when he was a young man walking in the mountains and having this state that to him felt like an LSD state, you know, completely nothing. And then when you started talking, I started thinking about people going to the desert. I was thinking about Jesus. I was thinking about Moses. You know, it's like, I feel like
Abraham,
right,
Muhammad.
These psychedelic states are these states where the boundaries between things starts to dissolve.
Yeah, boundary dissolution was the main theme of the psychedelic experience that Terrence McKenna talked about. To tie into what you're describing is essentially the production of endogenous psychedelic molecules. We do have DMT in our bodies. Whether that's released or not, still up for debate. It's tied into the near-death experience sort of trope. We don't really know that scientifically. You'd have to cut someone's brain open as they die.
I think they've tried with rats and didn't find anything.
Yeah, but they've also genetically created rats that can't endogenously produce DMT, and they do not live long.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
No kidding.
Yeah, so it's a very important
Essential.
neurotransmitter.
Yeah.
Biological, chemical. But you push your body to the breaking point, whether it's fasting or sleep deprivation, your body's gonna create some wacky substances, and you're going to bridge that realm, whatever that realm means, and it's gonna become entirely subjective. You're gonna lose objectivity at that point, and you're gonna be part of it. You're gonna be immersed in it. Although psychedelics are essentially a shortcut,
Right.
to fast for 40 days in a cave. I've heard this quote before. I think it's from Aubrey Marcus. To fast for 40 days in a cave to see God is possible, but it's like burning your house down to bake a loaf of bread. It's just not that easy or feasible for everyone. While you eat this little mushroom growing out of cow poop and you see God in 2 hours.
Yeah. Sage, would you like to push in any particular direction?
I was thinking along the lines of just kind of human evolution and our coevolution with animals and also with psychedelic substances. I was kind of curious about the Aboriginal side of their kind of lack of potential psychoactive substance. And I think we kind of touched on how they may have been able to actually dream travel or reach that dream state as you were describing, Aidan, possibly through just those physical acts of exertion, deprivation, and really just kind of tapping into those spaces without the use of psychedelics. But it's really remarkable to me that pretty much throughout the world, like this mixture of whether it's physical acts or use of particular medicines, there's really just this common core theme of shamanism present in cultures throughout the world. Is there any particular, I guess, group or tribe or culture that you Aidan, particularly align with or have studied extensively?
There's a number, essentially. I'm fascinated by all the anthropological parts, different cultures. For me, what I feel my own spirit is respect for the land and the culture that was here before me. That's the native ideology, the native culture set of techniques, or that means sweat lodge or hunting, even to me, is very much a ritual. But also with my blood being incredibly Northwestern European, I tie into the ancient, or try to tie myself into the ancient Gaelic traditions and the ancient Scandinavian religions. There's not too much archaeological evidence for the use of entheogens or psychoactives, but there is a very rich animism in that Northwestern European gene group, North European culture group, which is, it's essentially harder to get to because it's so far extended from us, like 1,000+ years, compared to Native Americans that are still here talking about their beliefs and everything, albeit more fragmented than they used to be.
Yeah.
But I tie into both of those essentially for respect for the teachings of the land I'm on, but also respect for my blood. Like, I fucking love the Vikings. They are great. They did some crazy shit. I like to think that they enjoyed psychedelics, but they definitely had very pagan animism rituals and everything. The idea of the berserker, are you aware of that, Julius? Yeah. To become a bear and to essentially go into battle wild.
My understanding is that it was Amanita muscaria?
Amanita muscaria. Oh, we don't really know. That's just kind of a hypothesis. Whether they use that or not, there's a lot of psilocybe species from West Europe. They could have just gone into blind rage. I mean, we have martial arts to essentially objectify fighting techniques and styles to live. But to fight a wild animal is terrifying because they don't have to think about reacting. They just are. And that's the idea of the berserker, is you just embody the bear. You just start fucking shit up, killing your enemy, having no fear of death, having no thoughts in that moment. And that's what's terrifying about that example of animism. But you see that around the world with cultures embodying certain animals during certain moments of their life. I'm reminded of the Mayans and their veneration of jaguars in that regard.
Right.
That can be essentially synonymous in some way to the Vikings' veneration of the bear.
I have a hard question if you're down for it. One thing that a lot of our episodes kind of center around is this idea of integration. And I feel like you are someone who I know who has so much knowledge about these traditions and these things. And I'm curious how you take this information and kind of integrate it for your own life, and like how this knowledge has potentially informed how you live and how you feel.
I got you. Thank you for keeping me on thread there, because I feel like I'm just riffing and ranting.
I'm loving it.
Going all over the place here, from wombats to Vikings. How I incorporate that in my own being, in my own life, my own experience. I mean, it starts off with my family's history with psilocybin cubensis mushrooms, essentially. My biological paternal grandfather picked them recreationally in the 60s. Didn't really have a good time with that. A lot of projectile vomiting. Was like, oh, this ain't for me, sort of thing. But in the 90s, my dad did it almost commercially, in a sense, where he was picking them in mass from fields illegally and then selling them a lot. But he got a lot of personal experiences from that. Although I'm more psychedelically experienced than he is, the mushroom's always been one of the key teachers in my life. I consider it a teacher. And to me, there's very few experiences for me as magical as hunting this medicine in the wild under a night sky or in a fog bank, and just the actual psychedelic experience for me, that to me is spiritual. Whether you want to objectify or subjectify it, to me, like, it's a spiritual experience that has greatly influenced the route, the pathway of my life. But I always say, and I'm quoting McKenna here, psychedelics inspire homework. To some degree, spiritual homework too. Not just, the accumulation of knowledge, but to what are you going to do with that knowledge? That's wisdom. So to me, it's always been like kind of a tapping force in the back of the head, my spiritual experiences regarding these substances and nature and animism, to direct my choices in life and to integrate them in a peaceful way to help the greater community at large. But yeah, it's influenced a lot of my paths in life, a lot of my own personal discoveries.
Can you speak on that a little bit?
Well, who are we? What does it mean to look at the reflection of your spirit looking back at you? It can be a really scary thing, but it's a thing I feel like we're all going to have to personally address on this level of why we're alive, why we're experiencing what we're experiencing every day. What does it mean? These are big questions. And to me, with my kind of mind, I want to systematically go through it and go, all right, I'm not going to run blindly in this direction and run naked through the forest going, I'm alive. I want to, sit by the creek and look in the water and be like, all right, let's tackle this ball of wax, essentially. And that's brought me to a bunch of interesting understandings about myself. A little bit of backstory, too. My parents are very opposite kind of people, whether it's politically or spiritually. Even their diet. But I can say that my dad is like an objective historian who's very enthusiastic and he talks way too much. My mom talks a lot, but she's more passive. She's very spiritual. If my mom is subjectivity, my dad is objectivity. With my mom, she calls herself a pagan witch. It's an interesting thing to grow up with in your household in, Southern Christian America. There's always a sort of reverence for the divine, for the sacred. And I grew up questioning like what that is. What is magic? What is spirituality? What is religion? And so that curiosity combined with the techniques of shamanism, my own interest in zoology, the sciences, but also respect for who I am, or love, actually more and accurately love for who I am, has brought me down this interesting pathway. And I don't know what it leads to. I just know I want to have fun in discovering who I am by using these series of techniques. I'm not a shaman. I'm not a guide or anyone. I'm just a really interesting white male in the South that loves to sit in the forest, joke around a campfire, and try to get to a greater good.
I like that. Sage?
Yeah, I'm glad you bring that up, because a lot of my thoughts towards shamanism kind of relate to the personal journey. Everybody, is at some point in their lives having to kind of discover or rediscover certain aspects about their lives, whether they call that magic or just inner strength or wisdom. And a lot of the times, especially in our Western world here, shamanism kind of gets like a bad rap, especially from kind of like self-proclaimed shamans or
plastic shamanism,
whatever title they may give themselves. And so a lot of the times many people get kind of either confused or wary when people start throwing this kind of verbiage around, and it can be a little daunting for people when they hear somebody either present themselves as shaman, or in as most cases may be, people refer to another particular person as a shaman. I know that always kind of raises red flags for me, but for in your experience and your kind of, I guess, your own personal practice, what would you say to somebody who may be wary of someone who calls themselves a shaman or something like those lines?
Please be wary of self-proclaimed shamans. To me, it's like you can't just pick the path picks you. You have to go through a series of teachings that are taught to you probably from a someone that it was taught to them. You get to be almost initiated in that. I feel like from a professional. Self-proclaimed shamans are just self-proclaimed experts of any topic I'm very wary of. That's the idea of plastic shamanism, which is like, oh, white people playing Indian. Yeah, that doesn't really resonate well. That feels fake. That feels artificial. It feels mass-produced. Yeah, if you want to learn this, go to an actual guide or a shaman. If you just want to learn about yourself, which I think that's a very personal aspect of shamanism, then you should do your own rituals. You should do your own ceremonies. And that could be as simple as lighting a candle in reverence for your dead. Or it could be like, sitting on the mountaintop under the full moon when the plants align, flying with the eagles. It's a huge spectrum. But there is a stigma in modern culture about, these essentially mass-produced gurus. I don't trust them. Anyone that says, oh, I'm a guru, I know everything, follow me. I'm like, you're trying to get something from me, man. You're trying to promote your own agenda at this point.
Yeah.
And so go do your own homework. Do your own homework. Do your due diligence if you're curious about these subjects. Yeah, it's anyone that's trying to promote that sort of subject material and say they're an expert. To me, it's like reading The Secret. I'm like, oh, really? You have to buy the book, though, to get in. I don't think you should commoditize the sacred.
Ooh,
that's a tricky one, huh? Wow.
Well, I mean, you often find a lot of times too in our society, people who are actively seeking answers, and so a lot of the times people may be drawn towards these kinds of self-proclaimed people who are offering a message or a solution. And
thank you, Sage.
Oftentimes can really just kind of confuse people into a state of non-reality based on experiences that may not be their own, but don't belong to them, and may belong to somebody completely different from them. They may not even align with their path or course of life. So I think it is something to be wary of, and but also very important to acknowledge that these are people out here. There's people out here that really are just after your money or after your labor or whatever it may be.
Yeah, and not to say that you can't actually purchase a amazing sacred experience. You can travel halfway across the world and stay at a hostel, whatever, and find something. To me, that's kind of doing your own homework to some degree, but you still have to pay money. To me, it's like, oh, don't answer the Yellow Pages ad for shaman experience. You're going to fly with your elders and talk with your dead grandma. Like, no, that's not, I'm skeptical of that. But you can buy this sort of experience if that's the route you want to go through. Just be a little bit skeptical.
Yeah, I want to tie back into what Sage was talking about. So in our fourth episode, we had Caleb, and Caleb used this term spiritual bypassing. And I said, well, what is that?
It's an interesting term.
And he said it's this idea that because you're doing the practices, because I'm doing yoga or have a meditation practice, I'm almost using that as a way to justify not doing the internal work or not having to deal with the primary issues. And I think about that a lot when you're talking about the commercialization or the commodification of the sacred. And Sage talking about these people who are offering solutions, I find that a lot where I have some part of me that's broken and someone out there is saying, hey, I can fix that. And it's almost like, wouldn't that be a delightful way to heal your deepest wounds if you could just someone could take it away from you or something like that? And I feel like, again, that's a part where it's like, that's so many red flags. It doesn't mean it's impossible. It doesn't mean there's someone out there who could interact with you in a certain way that could help you in some way, but it's a
little bit tricky business.
Yes. Yeah.
Back to that point too, I feel like that going with the theme of shamanism, it's a healer. It's a healer. And to be that medicine man, to be that spiritual practitioner, you have to heal yourself first. And then you have to have selfless love to help people heal themselves. You can't just be like, you're fixed. It doesn't work like that. It's a series of techniques to help the greater good of the community. And you don't, be careful with gurus.
Yeah. Yeah. There's this quote. I'm not sure exactly it, but it's like, if you meet Buddha on the road, kill him. And it's like,
I want to find who said that quote and ask him a bunch of questions.
we'll find out if it's a real quote. Yeah. And I guess there's this idea too. I was having a conversation with someone who was connected to someone called John the Healer.
You mentioned that.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, that's...
And as soon as I heard that, I got like the heebie-jeebies.
Ew.
And when I went home and looked it up, it's like, okay, here's a dude who's gotten in trouble for like sexual abuse.
Yeah.
And when you were talking about you have to heal yourself before you heal other people, I'm not sure I agree with that.
That's... All right, so I'm saying that because that's kind of like a common thread, principle of how we, as a modern culture, define shaman, a shaman, a medicine man, is they go off, they have a spiritual journey, they come back, and they're healed. But they have to, like, do the surgery themselves to fit that role, that archetype.
Here's where I was going with that. So I think there is something incredibly powerful if you think someone has power and they give you permission to heal yourself, or they tell you that you're healed. I think like the placebo effect is like one of the most
that's a good point.
Powerful things. So if you just believe that I've gone to the mountain and come down with this wisdom and some power, it might actually help. I might be a monster. I might turn around and then sexually molest someone else or abuse my power horribly, but I might have actually helped someone heal themselves.
Yeah, I also think that you're not permanently fixed. There are a few people, there's never been a 100% perfect man. So your own demons can come back.
Yeah.
You can get rid of them for a little bit, but they're like roaches. When it starts to get cold, they're going to come into your house.
Yeah.
Also, too, I want to draw a line of continuation from the ideas of shamanism, the ideas of medicine men and healers, to modern medicine.
Okay.
Like, you go to a doctor, you trust them to help you fix your body, or they're going to fix your body.
And if you don't, you won't get as many benefits.
Yeah, we think of shaman in the sense of like a witch or a wizard of some dude dancing around a fire, chanting. But if you have no idea of scientific knowledge at all, this is the person that's going to ask whatever spirits are out there how to help you.
Yeah.
And that could add the placebo effect. The shaman could be like, I'm blowing smoke on you. You're going to feel better. And you feel better. Who knows if that's spiritual or not spiritual, if placebo or not placebo.
Yeah, I love this idea of like, what would you call it, proto-scientific or something?
Yeah.
I remember I just saw this thing. It was a South American skull that it looked like skull surgery had been performed.
It had the
gold,
not a craniotomy.
Anyway, whatever it was, this person had survived brain surgery, I guess, or some kind of.
It might be craniotomy. You're welcome to check me on that. But they had a fracture on their skull, and someone cut the bone out and put like a brass plate. Yep. Yeah.
And the reason I'm bringing this up is I bet you that the distinction between like religion and healing, like there was no distinction. Probably.
No, there wasn't. And practitioners that have pure intentions, that's what I'm looking for. That's what my mom would call white magic. Healing magic, as opposed to black magic, which is the magic to hurt people for your own personal gain. That's darkness. That's scary, man. I want to be over here like, we're all happy. Everyone's well fed. Let's have fun. I don't want to like trick someone into giving something to me for my own personal benefit.
Yeah.
And that's where I think like
I'd like to interject quickly and thank you actually for that correlation into modern medicine. And it kind of helps develop this idea for me in my mind of whether you call it a shaman or whether you call him a doctor. You could relate the acquisition of information that may be kind of hidden or mysterious to the layman as either a direct physical or spiritual practice, and as part of that acquisition to develop a more knowledgeable and influential person, whether that's a healer or a mover or whatever you may do with this kind of medicine and energy. It's an acquisition of information that isn't readily available.
Yeah, and we get a lot of modern medicine from these traditions. The go-to is like the Amazon plant medicine, the go-to subject matter. We've learned a lot. Modern anesthesia is essentially influenced by the production of curare, this poison in Amazon tribes that essentially paralyzes your body. But it doesn't necessarily, well, in some cases it paralyzes your diaphragm, but in most cases it doesn't. So you can put someone under, but you're not going to stop their breathing. So much of modern medicine comes from these series of techniques of discovering the natural world, whether it's through trial and error or whether it's through your set of techniques.
Yeah.
The witches of medieval Europe were essentially herbalists.
Yeah.
Herbalists that would be like, oh, you have a foot pain, let me put some mullein on it, because mullein helps ease that arthritis. And we burned them because we were scared of what like power they had. But there is a direct correlation or evolution for that point of view from these series of techniques of healing, medicine, animism, whatever you want to call it, to modern medicine. I think that's a really important fact that we should look more into. And so that we don't just discredit all this from the get-go.
Yeah. Yeah. I also think as I'm looking at this subject from the point of view of an atheist, but also an atheist who believes like one of the biggest problems in modern life is like a spiritual malaise or a spiritual death. We're not very spiritual people. It's interesting that we're talking about this thing that used to combine kind of spirituality and health. That's not really it's not like you're going to go to a doctor. I guess you could say I'm depressed. I guess that you could switch that into psychology, but
Hey, you're a cardiologist. Can you help me out with God right now?
Yeah.
Sort of thing.
Yeah.
It's not really my cup of tea.
You got to go to someone else for that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's people forget that sort of fact. And I mean, even the symbol of modern medicine, there's a name for it. I cannot think of the two snakes wrapped around wrapped around each other with the wings. That's a very sort of shamanistic symbol.
Yeah.
It's because two snakes is an ancient symbol of shamanism. You see it with Shipibo ayahuasca traditions. You see it in Aboriginal art of two snakes. And I believe that was the symbol Hippocrates.
That makes sense. The Hippocratic Oath.
The first doctor, modern doctor, where he was like going to look at this objectively. But it's the symbol of healing, and it's the manifestation of connecting your soul to the physical world.
Yeah.
And I love the correlation of the two snake theme in all these practices with the DNA molecule.
Yeah.
The double helix.
Yeah.
To quote Dr. Jeremy Narby's book, The Cosmic Serpent, it's the micro side of our spirituality manifests itself in the macro world. So that you go to these places and you are the conduit for the information in the real world. The information comes to you somehow through these experiences, through these states, whether they're endogenously produced or not.
Yeah.
And you use that to learn about the real world and help people have a better understanding, possibly heal people. And if you don't heal people when you hurt them, that's the dark arts.
Yeah.
No bueno there. Thank you for listening. I feel like I'm going all over the place for this interview. I'm just riffing and
I
ranting.
don't think you have. I feel like we've been actually on a coherent tangent or direction.
We keep in line with the subject material. But no, I've been fascinated about these subjects for the most part my entire waking life, conscious life, or even unconscious life for that matter. Who knows? So I try to have a healthy approach to them. I also am curious of why I'm curious in the first place. That's kind of a third person perspective. And I try to go about my life with an understanding or a curiosity of what this means, and understanding what I know already and a curiousness to know more. If you think about life as a great big picture, like a billion piece jigsaw puzzle, no one's going to put that jigsaw puzzle together in their own life. They're going to put different aspects of that puzzle together, whatever they focus their attention on. You could have singing doctors out there putting the puzzle, the section of the puzzle that is the manifestation of the angels singing in the heaven, of trumpets billowing, of God shining down with a big smiley Santa Claus beard, and those people that are just so focused on the bigger picture at large. I'm over here putting together the corner of the puzzle of a bunch of frogs trying to gangbang a snake underneath a mushroom, going, man, this is cool right here. There's some crazy shit. That's a real image, by the way. This snake trying to get away from these toads, and all these toads are just lined up humping him.
Where's that from?
It's, when frogs go into amplexus, that sort of binding of the arms to mate, they get really horny, so they'll just grab anything.
Okay,
And I'm like,
gotcha.
wow, this is nature. That poor snake, otherwise would be a predator, is getting essentially gang mobbed, raped by all these toads. And there's a mushroom in the background. I'm like, that's cool, man. I'm going to look over there and learn that part, and I'm okay with learning that. No one's going to put together the whole picture of their life. Mm-hmm. So with my life, the subject material of animals and totems and medicine, that's where my focus is. And one day I might be more prevalent with those subjects, that knowledge. Right now, I'm an amateur. I know nothing, but it's fun. Mm-hmm. Thank you. Hopefully that was a good analogy.
I'm into it. Sage, do you have anywhere you want to prod towards?
I'm just happy with being a witness to this conversation and being a participant. This is awesome. I love people, man.
Just trying to have fun, but also get to a deeper level of meaning.
I did have a question.
Yes, please.
So you're talking about kind of your journey and what you're interested in. I'm curious, what would you like to learn in the time that you have left?
Hopefully you have a good bit of time left.
Yeah, he has a...
What do I want to learn? That's a tricky one for me because there's a lot. It's really wherever my curiosity flows to. Mm-hmm. I was always curious of what do visions mean? Mm-hmm. Like when you see your actual world change physically, you're having a hallucination. What is that? What's the mechanism in the synaptic gap of the neurons in your brain that is creating this? Mm-hmm. Is it really there or is it not? Are you looking into another dimension, or are you just quote unquote going mad, going insane? That's always been a factor of me. I don't think I'll personally discover that for the progression of humanity, mm-hmm. but I would personally like to have sort of an answer for that in my own life. Ooh, I don't know what happens after you die. Maybe nothing. I always hold deeply in my heart that all the answers of the universe to the big questions are immediately revealed to you. Like who killed JFK?
Yeah, I've thought that.
Is Bigfoot real? Are there other dimensions? Are there angels?
Yeah.
I would love for that to happen, man.
Yeah, when I was a suicidal 17-year-old, that was the cool, that would be that was one of the silver linings I would think about. What if this thing that I do not understand and frustrates me to no end would reveal itself if I died?
I have no evidence that that's real or not.
Me neither.
But I believe in it in a sense. And I whether it's shamanism or, the teachings of religion, I always tie it back to the great universities or thought schools of ancient history. Mm-hmm. The Egyptian Book of the Dead is really quite similar to the Tibetan Book of the Dead, the Bard of the Dal, that talks about the state after death and between birth. Mm-hmm. That ties into the whole reincarnation ideology. That's really interesting. That's whew, it's like a DMT trip that's 41 chapters long. And they had spent years in collective thought together to unlock the secrets of the universe. Mm-hmm. So to me, that's a desire, a hope that one day I'll know or have an idea of a peak while I'm still alive.
Yeah.
But also, more than anything, I want to learn how to be happy in life. Mm. And this thought trail, this avenue, this rabbit hole, has been for me my own set of stepping stones to get me further to that goal. Who am I? I have no clue. Mm-hmm. But it's fun to discover, mm-hmm. and it's fun to discover it with friends.
Yes, it is.
Does that kind of bring you a little bit closer to the answer of your question?
I believe so, yes. Yeah.
All right.
We are approaching the hour. Could we end on an animal story? And I have one in mind it's one of my favorite stories that you tell.
Oh, sure. It might take me a minute to telescope the memory, but go ahead.
It's about your cat.
Which one?
The one where the cat and the stairs.
That's not really an animal fact, but that's a story.
No, it's a story. It wasn't an animal fact that I was asking for.
I thought you were prefacing that.
You can have an animal fact after this story.
Oh, no. My favorite animal by far is cats. All cats. They are nature's most beautiful, amazing killers, assassins. They're so great. I can talk about them for hours. But I had this one cat. It's probably the most influential cat in my life. I've had a lot of influential cats, but this is Daisy. Got her when I was 6. She passed away in my arms when I was 24. But she was like, to quote my mom, she was my first true familiar spirit that I connected to. She was like, a black and orange tabby, sort of that brindle color, and very zen. I mean, she put up with my, my sugar ball years of 6, 7, 8, 9, where I was running around and doing that kind of thing. But she was the animal that helped me go to sleep at night. Like some people would have a teddy bear or a nightlight. I'd have Daisy in my bed. I would watch like Sci-Fi Channel and these B movies, then couldn't go to sleep at night, or watch like a Loch Ness Monster documentary, couldn't go to sleep at night. So if I had Daisy in the room, I always knew that cats have super senses. They can see, I believe, like 6 times better in darkness than we can. They have, those ears that orbit like satellite dishes and can pinpoint noises. Their world, the way they experience their world, is far different than ours. It's almost supernatural how they can, hear a mouse from 600 feet away in a pile of grass and be able to pinpoint it and see like the ultraviolet urine trail and stuff like that. They live in a supernatural world. So to me, Daisy was an indicator of something bad happening. So she had to be in my bed. And if she was on my bed when I was like, 6, 7, 8, 9, I would go to sleep and I would sleep well. But often I'd wake up in the middle of the night and she was not there. She'd go to my mom's bedroom because my mom would go to sleep after me. My mom would pet her and go to sleep in her bed, which was upstairs. We lived like in an old turn-of-the-century bungalow with all these wooden steps and everything. So for years, I am obsessed with stealth too, with hunting, with camouflage, very much like the way Kat is, or a hunter. That's another conversation altogether. But I was obsessed with memorizing the creaks in my wooden house so I could walk up the stairs and pick Daisy off my parents' bed without waking them. I never once woke them. And this went on for, at least a couple of years. I didn't realize till later, I'm like, wow, that was probably a very influential thing I did in my life without realizing it. But I'd go up there and it might take me 30 plus minutes to sneak up to my parents' bedroom, creep over. And if they made a noise, I would go dead silent. And then slowly lower my arms and heave my cat up without disturbing her so she wouldn't meow, and then carefully put her in my arm and then walk the entire pathway back to my bed. It was a safety net for me, essentially.
Didn't you tell me you memorized what stairs creaked?
Yes, I believe it was 3rd, 7th, and 12th.
I like it.
Those are the ones that made the loudest creaks. So you had to like step over them and slowly, like, I think it's in yoga, you tiger walk, where you use like the edge of your heel so you don't make a noise. So it's like walking like a cat. And back to animism, like I was trying to embody like a hunter stealth cat-like mode. When you hear cat-like, you think of something that's creeping and stalking and you don't see it. That's for me what I was embodying, and how I got to sleep at night when I was a little kid. Is that a good enough story?
Thank you, Aidan. If you have an animal fact that you'd like to tell us, I'll take it, but we could also end it right there.
Oh boy, here's a one I learned recently, or relearned. Sicilians are a type of worm, snake-like amphibian, very primitive. And there's one species, I believe it's from Brazil, very primitive amphibian. Some of them are lungless; they breathe directly through their skin. But this one species, I believe found in the New World, is viviparous, gives birth to live young, which is weird for an amphibian. They don't lay eggs, or eggs gestate in their body. When they're young hatch, they need nutrients, but they can't hunt for themselves. So the female grows out a layer of flesh on her abdomen, a very thick, meaty layer of flesh. And her young eat her body alive. And usually after, it's a 10-day cycle of her growing this fatty layer of skin. And the young are literally eating her body alive. And that's how they grow up. And I'm like, man, how did that evolve, dude? That is a wild animal fact. Like Sicilians feed their young with their own living body? Thank you. Hopefully that's good enough, man.
That was beautiful. Sage, do you have any closing thoughts?
Nature is awesome and weird.
Nature is beautiful and awesome and sexy and sometimes fucking brutal.
Yep. Yeah.
And I love it.
And sometimes toads will try to bang a snake.
Oh man, yeah. I think that's like one of those beautiful images ever. Like, yeah. If I didn't have too many tribal ink, I'd get that tattooed, man.
Well, I love you, Aidan. I really appreciate you sitting with us and doing this.
I love you too, Julius.
Yep.
Hopefully I was close enough to the mic. This is the first time practicing.
You did great. I think you'll sound good.
Slightly sweaty.
We love you, Sage.
I love you, Sage.
Much love, everybody.
Big hug.
We'll see you in the woods.
Peace, love, and medicine.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening. We hope you will join us next episode where we will be talking to Molly Green. Molly is a certified and practicing life and health coach. She considers herself to be a compulsive creator, a mystic, a chronic learner, and an aspiring structural integration practitioner. We love you, we wish you well, and we hope to talk to you soon.